right now. And there we are, Nomad X community, Facebook fam, the whole group out there, and everyone who is watching. Welcome back to the show. We are starting a second live session this week, and today with someone crazy special. Idahosa is his name, and he has a skill. I've never heard about it before I've been introduced to your website, Idahosa. And it was super interesting because I feel like what you are teaching people is something which could be also highly valuable for myself. So, Idahosa, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here. Awesome. Thank you so much for participating.
Yep.
Can you give us a short introduction about yourself and actually what is it you are doing?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Idahosa Ness. I'm from the US, and I teach people how to flow in any language. So we have a language learning website called mimicmethod.com where you learn 4 languages by ear. We have a bottom up approach where you learn how to move your mouth, how to move your face, how to move like the native speakers. So if you want to learn Spanish, for example, instead of going to a classroom and conjugating verbs and all that kind of nonsense that doesn't actually work in the long term, what you're learning is how do the Mexicans move their mouth when they speak? Like, hola, ¿qué tal, amigo? Buenos estás? Versus the Spaniards or the Colombians, right? We're learning French, all that kind of good stuff. And we do that using a musical technique. I myself grew up playing violin and various musical instruments. And the idea there is we teach you how to move your mouth and play it like an instrument. So we take songs, people are rapping in our languages, and they're doing all these things without even knowing what stuff means yet. So we kind of turned the whole language learning thing upside down on its head, but it's way more natural, way more intuitive. And what I want people to have is this experience of flow in their conversations, in their learning. You lose your sense of time, your sense of self, you're engaging, you're connecting with people. That's really what we're all about, just putting people into deeper states of flow with each other.
That's awesome, man. I'm absolutely loving it. And as I said before, I've never heard about it. Can you give us a bit of a background story? How did that start? How did you come up with that?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in US speaking only English. And then when I was 17, I went to Mexico and had a host family. I was like deeply immersed in the culture and going to classes. And I was doing well in the school program, like, learning how to read and write and whatnot. But I was feeling very isolated because I wasn't able to understand what people were saying to me. They were speaking Spanish way too fast. And then when I wanted to speak, I was getting tongue-tied and be like, yo quiero, right? And, feeling stupid. And I've been there for like a month and was just, it's really weird sensation just being in the middle of an entire sea of people with whom you can just not communicate for an extended period of time. So you're surrounded by people, but you're very deeply lonely. And one day I kept studying. I couldn't get any breakthroughs. And then one day I was like, you know what? Screw this. If I'm going to suck at Spanish, I might as well make it look good, make it sound good. So I decided I'm not going to worry about grammar. I'm not going to worry about what things mean anymore. All I'm going to do is try to sound as Mexican as possible. And in fact, I kind of had like the spirit of Antonio Banderas in my head whenever I spoke. So I go to a restaurant and instead of being like, ¿puedo tener más guacamole con mis tacos, por favor? I'd be like, ¿puedo tener más guacamole con mis tacos, por favor? And I would just go straight telenovela mode, super, super into character. But when I started doing that, I was taking it seriously. And I'm like, he doesn't say tacos. It's not tacos. He's like doing tacos, and I'm getting deeper and deeper into all these nuances and subtleties of the sound. And then I realized in order to do that, I need to figure out what's actually going on in the mouth. So I started deep diving into phonetics and physiology and all these things. And very quickly after I started doing that, all of a sudden, like I woke up one day and I'm just understanding everybody randomly. I'm like, oh, wow, I understand Spanish. And then I started speaking and then things are just kind of unconsciously rolling out of my tongue without me realizing it. And I'm like, whoa, like I have finally unlocked a foreign language. And then I repeated that process. I went to China during university, spent a lot of time there before I learned Chinese. And then afterwards I went to Brazil. I speak 7 languages now, just repeating this process.
Wow.
And and what I discovered in that first one is that, I get it. The secret is you want to try to get the accent first. You want to try to perfect that, and you can use music as a way to do that and do it and have fun doing it. So my goal is always like, let me try to sound like a Chinese person before I really I'm starting to use the language and know what it means. And it's funny, yeah. So in all the languages I speak, I've had the experience of someone initially thinking I was a native speaker, even in Chinese. And
oh, really? Wow.
In Chinese, it only works on the phone. And one time, actually, a funny story is I was looking for an apartment in Beijing, so I'm calling people. I'm like, 你好, 你们要跟我 and like it's going to hardcore Beijing, like negotiating and haggling them, and they're like, yelling at each other. And then I show up at the apartment to go check it out, and then like this old lady opens the door and says, "Hey, huh?" It like just was not what she was expecting whatsoever. So yeah, that's what we do. It's all about yeah. And then the actual musical technique, I was learning my third foreign language of Portuguese while I was in Brazil, studying Brazilian music and percussion. And I was having difficulty. I joined this drum band, and I had difficulty like learning these Afro-Brazilian percussions because I wasn't used to them growing up in the US. So I kind of went home and like broke it down systematically to teach myself, and then taught myself very quickly through this system I made. And then was able to join them and perform with them, and felt really good about that. And then one day, while just like on a bus, I had this like flash in my head, and I was like, oh, wait, this is how you can teach people language. So that idea, it became an online program, and that's my business today, the Mimic Method.
Bro, that's so awesome. I'm blown away, and I kind of like have a taste from where you're coming from, because I've been like traveling all around the world, and there are I remember when I lived in Vietnam, or even now by living in Indonesia, I not really speak the language, but I got my phrases and I pronounce them as a local. And I had that as well, like you walk in a shop, they don't see you, but I can only say hello and how are you? Isn't it a nice day? And I said it in a perfect Indonesian, but then they look at me, it's like, fuck, he's not, but he speaks Indonesian, and keep going. No, that's it. That's all I had,
Yeah.
That's awesome. Guys, very short note by the side. If you have questions, if you want to know more, just drop everything in the comments. Even if you see the review, we're happy to answer all of them. And if you like what we do here, leave us a like, leave us some love, comments and stuff like that. We are really, really appreciating. All right, bro, back to the topic. I want to know a little bit more. I want to dig a little bit deeper, because
Sure.
I love languages, and I actually would consider myself kind of like learning them very easily. But if I learn with your methods, I just learn to speak, or do I also in any way learn to write, or is that just a speaking thing?
So we don't do any reading and writing in our programs. And the reason for that is because I identify reading and writing, or premature literacy, as one of the main things that stops people from conversational fluency. Here's why. So I grew up in America writing with the English, right? And we use Roman alphabet to represent the sounds I'm speaking to you in English. But then, someone who doesn't learn English comes, they try to learn our stuff, and they're super confused because nothing in our writing system makes sense, right? So what's going on is most people have a learn by eye approach, meaning if I want to learn a new vocabulary, I come into a place and I'm like, hey, can you write that down for me? I have flashcards. I have my Duolingo app, and it's everything is just using reading and writing and reading and writing. Now, if you do that and you're consistent, you can get to a level where you can like read a newspaper or like send an email in the language. But then you go out into the street and people start talking to you and you're like, oh, right. And for me, it's like, man, I speak 7 languages, but I don't read. I read in English. Like if I want to read a book, I'm gonna get the information in English. I can read in the other ones, but it's not really a priority of mine. The reason why I learn languages is so I can connect with people in conversation. So what happens is people are reading and writing, and they'll see a word. I'll give you an example, a very clear example of this. I very often hear people say the word 7 in French, and they'll be like, sept, right? And if you see my lips, I'm going sept. And the reason why they say sept is not because of some weird Americans, we can't say set, we have to say sept. It's because the letter P is in the word set in French. So we see it, and then our brains have a very tight association between that letter and the physical movement and the sound effect. And now we're hallucinating sounds that aren't actually there. So I spent a lot of time listening to people and correcting their accent. And I can tell you that the majority of people's pronunciation errors comes as a result of them reading the word in their head with their native system writing, rather than just allowing the true pure reality of the sound enter into the ear. So in short, we don't speak the way we write in any language, really.
Right.
So if you learn how to write first, it will alter the way you speak, and people will understand you, but you'll have a hard time understanding them.
That makes totally sense, and now I love it even more because writing was something I never actually liked. So the speaking part, definitely, what's the fascinating thing about it? And also, you said you speak 7 languages. Which 7 languages are this?
So English, of course. Then I learned Spanish in Mexico. Then I went to China and learned Chinese, Mandarin Chinese. Then I went to Brazil, learned Brazilian Portuguese. Then after that, I went to Montreal, learned French. And then I went to Germany and learned German, and then spent a brief time in Italy and got conversational Italian, and then I also know European Portuguese. So I also know various versions of each of the languages I speak. But yeah, I think I covered all 7 there. Yeah.
Yeah, I counted it at 7.
Yeah, and I dabble in other ones like Japanese and like Hebrew. I have like a basic understanding in as well.
That's awesome, bro. I'm absolutely fascinated. Are the 7 languages also the ones you teach at the moment, or how is that working? What can people learn from you? What languages?
Yeah, so we actually have programs in 10 languages. So including the ones I spoke of just now, we have Japanese, Russian, and Korean. And no, we don't have Korean. Sorry, we have Japanese, Russian, and it'll come to me later what the other language we have that I don't speak.
Don't worry.
But anyways, the what we do in our programs is, like I said, we don't actually currently have programs that teach you vocabulary or anything. All we focus on is how does the language sound. So, for example, we have a thing called like the 56 elemental sounds of German, right? And what we do is everything anyone says in German can be broken down to some combination of these 56 sounds, like like all these things. And you know, it's interesting because the alphabet in our writing is only going to have like 28 characters, or whatever, in German.
Right.
But there's 56 unique sounds your ear needs to learn. So we just walk you through each one and what happens in the mouth. So I can do that for languages I don't converse in fluently, because right now we're looking at the universal musicality of language. So in our programs, you learn articulation. How do you move your tongue to make all the specific sounds? You also learn rhythm, you know, how do syllables stress and play out. You learn melody or cadence, so how your voice goes up and down, like in, you know, French, like, right? Or Spanish, like, so you learn all that kind of stuff. So you do a bunch of weird stuff. If you do our courses, make sure you do it in a room where no one can look at you and judge you, because you'll be making a bunch of weird sound effects. But people love it. It's fun.
Yeah. That's cool, man. That's cool. That's like I said, I can't say it enough. It's really impressive. What are the results you see? You know, like when people are learning a language through your programs, are they learning fast, or how long does it take actually to? Let's say if I want to learn Spanish, how long would it take going along with your program to have like the basics in place?
Yeah. So you know, we made this new upgraded program where we're really going deep on especially the rhythm and the melody part. And just to give an example, people who are familiar with Spanish, like they've taken it in school and they have an intermediate level, they can kind of get by, but they struggle with listening comprehension. They can't understand people at all. These people, when they do our first module in our new course, where you're moving syllables around and learning how to hear on a syllable level rather than a word level. I won't go into detail about that, but it's just kind of, you're restructuring the foundational way your ear works in the language. And you do that for a couple of days. We get emails all the time like, wow, I've been studying Spanish for like 15 years and I've always struggled to understand people. But I've done your thing for a week now and I've turned on the radio, and for the first time, like I'm finally able to follow along with what they're saying. So what we're doing
Right.
was we're kind of moving pieces around on the foundational level of what's going on in your brain and your mind. And then you have all these emergent effects coming out of it. So like I said, we don't teach a vocab. So if you do our program, you won't be fluent in the language. Like if you're brand new, you won't be fluent. What you'll have is the ability to mimic. And you can get that in like, 3 to 6 weeks, depending on how much time you put into it. And then with that mimic ability, you go into a conversation or you're watching something, and then, imagine it's a made up language. And I see someone be like, kalapatapa. And then I'm like, oh, that guy just said kalapatapa and drank some water. I guess there's some relationship between those sound effects and that situation. And then I walk into the restaurant and I'm like, kalapatapa? And they're like, oh. And the waiter comes back with water. I'm like, boom. That's what language is. We're just matching sound effects to situations.
Wow. That's so cool. So let's say I want to go next year. I want to go to South America. Obviously, I need to improve my Spanish. So 3 to 6 weeks, and we're all set up. You would say?
Yeah. What I would encourage you, someone in your case, if you do our program, if you do our program like ahead of time, and you're just focusing purely on like the sound, it's like a month ahead of time. You're just going deep in the sound. What we're doing is we're opening you up. So if you didn't do our program and you show up on the shores of South America and you walk in there, people are just keeping it and all this kind of stuff, right? And it just bounces off your ear or your earlobes onto the ground. If you do our thing and you're learning, all the 39 sounds of Spanish, how to break things down, like buenos dias, señoritas, and all that kind of stuff. And then you show up there. Now, all of a sudden, things are in slow motion for you. People are saying stuff. You can like catch it. And then you can ask, ¿Cómo se dice eso? ¿Cómo te llama? And then people are like saying things, and now you're able to pick it up and mimic. So what I want people is like, honestly, I don't really want to teach people language. Like the reason I want to teach people like what stuff means is because the fun part is going off on the adventure and just like learning through mimicry and making friends and like just figuring things out along the way. So really, we're about giving you the tools for figuring things out and being an autonomous learner on your own.
Exactly. I think that's exact. This is kind of like how I learned English. It's still not a really good English, but when I think it was like in my early 20s, I went to Canada and I went to a language school, 3 months intense English. But the English I actually learned was like hanging out in the bars after the school. Exactly. Hanging out with all these people and having a good time. And that's kind of like how I learned. That's why it makes absolutely sense. And also very quick, let me just go quickly through this comment here. And we have someone who is asking, how many hours do I need to spend daily in learning a new language to reach that goal? I think we're almost covered that. But what would be your advice on it?
Yeah, so one thing I try to encourage people is, what is the goal? And we tend to just kind of throw out this word fluency, like, one day I'll be fluent, and then the Queen of England or the Queen of France will come down and pat me on the head and say, you are now fluent in French, right? And we're like, oh, what level are you? B1, C1, and there's all these kind of like standardizations, and not to knock those too much, but for me, the real goal is to achieve flow. And you can think of flow on various levels. One is most language learners are stuck, right? And they taking the courses, doing their apps, but they feel like in a conversation is the exact same result every time. Flow looks like every time you have a conversation, you walk away better than you were. You walk away with new words, new information, right? So, and then flow is also when you're in conversation, you're able to follow along and participate and not feel awkward, not seize up. People are like, what do you think, Sarah? You're like, oh, it's my turn to talk. And, so that state is what we're trying to get to. So, we have this point, I call it a point when language learning stops sucking. Because the first couple of weeks or month or whatever it is, you're just in a conversation and you can't understand anything. And then you get tongue tied when you speak. If you do like our training, for example, for like 30 minutes a day and really focus on the psychological piece and allowing yourself to relax into it and whatnot, you do that for like 6 weeks. You come into a conversation, you pick up the words here and there, and then you start to it starts to be flowy again. It starts to be fun again. And if the situation of being in conversation is fun, engaging, and you're learning each time, then you'll want to come back. And each time you come back, you get better and better and better. And you just keep flowing and flowing and flowing upward. Right. So really my goal as a teacher is to put you to that situation where you're no longer stuck. And then you won't even care anymore about like, you know, how long I need to do anything, because you'll just be having fun, having conversation. But otherwise, if you want like a clean answer to that, depending on the language, if you're in your context, you can get to a level of like conversational fluency within a matter of months.
Awesome. Perfect, bro.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We are already over time. I promised to keep it down to 20 minutes. Here we are. Thank you so much. One last question, just to drop probably one more small value bomb here. Is there anything people can do to use your methods before they join your program? Any master advice, you know, like just go by talk to people, listen to music, or whatever it is?
Yeah, I'd say cultivate an interest in the culture, and music is one of the best ways to do that. Go out there and find songs and really listen to the songs, not just the lyrics, but really listen to the way people are saying it. Just switch your attention away from what's this mean, what's the grammar, to being like, how does Antonio Banderas speak? Like, what is the sound effect? And try to listen to language as if it were music, because it is a type of music. And if just by making that mental shift, you'll start to appreciate the language in a whole different way, and also learn it and acquire it faster because you're paying attention to the real thing.
Exactly. I remember when I was like super young, I was singing English songs, and it sounded pretty well, but I had no clue what I'm saying.
Exactly.
You know, like I have no idea what I'm saying, but I was singing it and it felt good. And at one point you transform it. So that makes, it makes totally sense. Bro, thank you so much. I already dropped your website into the comments. So guys, this is where you can find all the programs. This is where you can get in touch and get all the knowledge. From my side, thank you very much again. It was a pleasure to have you here today and share your knowledge. This was super, super valuable. Thanks from me, thanks from the whole community and the team. And I'm looking forward to stay in touch and see what you're coming up next. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you guys. Take care.
Awesome, bro. Thank you. See you soon. Bye-bye.